Today we'll be visiting the dreadful Snake Mountain. Mattel had released various forms of serpent-themed mountains as playsets. Some of them looked like this, some of them looked like that. In the cartoon, Snake Mountain looked a lot like this, which was a later release in Mattel's line. But this was the official Snake Mountain playset that they released that kind of didn't really look like it looked in the cartoon. Sure, it had a snake, but it also had like a wolf head and a big like goblin face, and you could move its mouth like this. In the original 80s version of it, the wolf head was actually a microphone. And so when you were a little kid, you could talk into it and would make a scary monster voice. And you could pretend that the mountain was talking. And it was tons of fun. And back in the 80s, when technology was sort of a novelty, it really worked. But the new re-release is also totally awesome and fabulous. It's got all kinds of terrible torture devices and traps for Skeletor to put the good guys in. So whichever version of the playset that you like to use in your imagination, the more cartoon accurate one or the more elaborate one, it was the home for the evil warriors. Now, we'll be taking a deeper dive later into all the different evil warriors, but for today's episode, I want to focus mostly on Skeletor and his best friend or partner, perhaps, Evil-Lyn. Okay, first up, Evil-Lyn. Evil-Lyn is my absolute favorite character from Masters of the Universe. I do love a wicked queen or an evil witch, and Evil-Lyn's got it all. Now, her backstory is kind of all over the place. In one really, really early version, she was a co-pilot with Queen Marlena when they were astronauts from Earth, and they crash landed together on Eternia. Now, I think there was some like jealousy going on, or maybe they were like frenemies, or maybe Evil-Lyn or Evelyn, as she was before she turned into Evil-Lyn, wasn't maybe the nicest girl. And once they crashed and the queen got swept up by the king and got to become a queen of the land, Evelyn had had it, and her jealousy took over, and so she became Evil-Lyn. And as hilarious and awesome as that storyline sounds, it never really made it past some real early pages in the lore. So another version more recently painted her as the daughter of Hordak, which was kind of interesting, but that series didn't really go anywhere. That was the Netflix children's series. There was a lot in that Netflix era about Evil-Lyn that we're not going to go into with this video, or probably ever. Instead, I would rather focus on her relationship with Keldor. So now, who's Keldor? So Keldor was the handsome, dashing human before he became Skeletor. And he had an axe to grind because he was the illegitimate brother of King Randor. And so even though he was the firstborn, he was illegitimate. And so he couldn't become heir to the throne. And so he had to watch as his younger brother became king and took over and got all the fame and glamour and glory. It's all very sort of Old Testament. And so it did give him some motivation to want to be evil or to take over the land. And so there is different stories that flesh all this out. And that is the joy and the wonder of Masters of the Universe, is that it is, at the end of the day, a toy. And so you can tell whatever story you want and use your imagination to tell whatever story that you want. But some of the basic beats of the Keldor story is that he was the disenfranchised member of the royal court who became jealous and ambitious and wanted to take over, and so waged some sort of attack. So there was scenes of him attacking the castle and the palace, and maybe even being part of the abduction of baby Adora. So it would have been his own niece. So really complicated family dynamics. But at any rate, he definitely has some relationship with Hordak. He was his student. Hordak was his mentor. In another version, Evil-Lyn used Hordak's magic to help save Keldor when, in this battle that took place, or possibly the abduction of Adora, or some combination of all the above, Keldor had acid thrown in his face, and so his face melted off, and that's why he became Skeletor. And to sort of save him from death, but turning him into the monstrous Skeletor, there was all kinds of different versions of what happened. One version, it was Evil-Lyn that saved him. One version, it was that she worked in collaboration with Hordak to save him. And then there's another variation of it where Hordak had access to yet another sort of extra dimensional Lovecraftian monster, Demon Man, Demo Man, and he sort of magically transformed them together into Skeletor. So whatever the version is that you like, it's all very interesting and all very exciting and heartbreaking. If you think of Evil-Lyn as being in love with Keldor and just being willing to do anything for him, going to the ends of the earth, making the deal with the devil, and all of those tropes are sort of mixed into their storyline. Another trope that sort of presented itself in sort of a queer read on the 80s version of the cartoon was that the voice characterization of Skeletor painted him as sort of anything other than heterosexual. And so that would make her relationship with Skeletor particularly hilarious. Maybe he was her gay best friend, but they fought and they were sort of nasty to one another. And at the end of the day, she wanted his power. And so that was a characterization that kind of stayed with Evil-Lyn kind of in all of the versions, is that she herself is equally ambitious as Skeletor, wants power, wants to be the main queen. A final note on Snake Mountain is that we find out in later lore, the big reveal is that Skeletor was not the landowner. He didn't have landowner rights to Snake Mountain. He was actually a squatter. The indigenous people of Snake Mountain were the Snake Men. King Hiss was sort of a Lovecraftian, horrible monster figure, and he lived deep within the bowels of Snake Mountain. He and his hideous Snake Men cronies. And Skeletor discovered their like frozen bodies down inside the depths of Snake Mountain, and he reanimated them with the hopes that they would be a good ally and partner with him in defeating He-Man. And as you can imagine, it didn't quite go so well. So the Snake Men then went on to become a new faction of even more evil creatures. Sometimes they battled Skeletor, sometimes they battled He-Man, but they were always hideous. And so as we wait with eager anticipation for this summer's big movie version of Masters of the Universe, we can only anticipate and speculate what characters and storylines might be taking place in Snake Mountain. Are we going to get Hordak? Are we going to get the Snake Men? Are we going to get Demo Man? Are we going to get Keldor? Now, we know that Jared Leto is playing Skeletor, and Jared Leto would make a great, handsome Keldor. And if you think back to Jared Leto's early career, he often played the pretty boy that got disfigured. If you think about Fight Club or Requiem for a Dream, so maybe they're going to lean into that. Who knows? But if you enjoy this content and you enjoy these stories, stay with me as we continue to explore the joy of these toys and wait in eager anticipation for this summer and the big movie to come.
Subscribe!